Becca Balint, one of Windham County's state senators and the president pro tempore, or Senate leader, of the Vermont State Senate, has announced she's a candidate for the U.S. Congressional seat being vacated by Peter Welch, who plans to run for the U.S. Senate seat being vacated by Senator Patrick Leahy, who announced his plan to retire from the U.S. Senate after 8 terms in office. Lieutenant Governor Molly Gray has also announced she's running for the same congressional seat in the Democratic Party's primary, which will be held next August. If either is elected, they would be the first woman to occupy Vermont's lone seat in the U.S. Congress. Balint was the first woman to serve as the state's Senate leader. We had a chance to have a conversation with Senator Balint to find out about which issues she'll be emphasizing in her campaign.
Let me just start, I suppose, with the most blindingly obvious question is,
Yes.
What prompted you to throw your hat in the ring at this point?
Yes, thank you, Andrew. Obviously, it is a decision that requires a lot of deep thought and contemplation. And so, I'm really running because we are facing really enormous challenges, not just here in Vermont, but nationally. And we've got a situation where working families are continuing to struggle. The pandemic is not over. We are making little progress at the national level on climate action. And, in a real deep sense for me, the future feels really perilous because our democracy itself is feeling at risk right now. It's feeling really fragile. And what I've come to realize through my work in the legislature is we can't tackle these really big challenges if we continue to remain so divided as a people. And I know that you cover the news a lot. You're deep in your community. We have some really deep and what I would argue is dangerous divisions that are going on right now, both in our state and in the country, and sometimes, frankly, even in our communities and our own family. So, I really want this campaign to be about acknowledging that despite the darkness that we all see around us, that I truly believe that we can get to a better place. And so I want to bring my frame of bringing courage and kindness to my work, not being afraid of tough fights, but making sure that we're focused on fighting about the policies and not fighting people and dehumanizing them and demonizing them, which is where I feel like we're at right now as a nation. And so I'm hoping to bring my experience both as a teacher and a parent and a community member and the pro tem of the Vermont Senate, where we've also had to get a lot of things done, even though we may disagree. And I'm hoping that Vermonters will elect me to serve them in Washington. I feel really committed to doing the work, a continuation of the work that we've done here in Vermont that I know needs more attention at the federal level, and most specifically around affordable health care, Medicare for all, decoupling insurance from people's place of employment. I think we've seen that deeply in this pandemic, and lots of support for families, childcare, family medical leave insurance, and workforce development in a really deep way. I've seen that throughout Windham County and the rest of the state. And so I see this really as a continuation of the work that I've done, and just realize that we have much more to do at the federal level on these issues.
I want to talk to you further about the polarization and demonization you mentioned there, because that's been something that's been on my mind a lot lately. But before we go there, I guess I just wondered, in the shorter term, you'll be still the Senate pro tem in the coming session, which looks like it's going to be well, I guess they're always challenging, I suppose.
They are always challenging. You got a lot of big issues. Yep.
The next year you have sort of an interesting situation with the ARPA funds that are available to attack some of these problems like housing, childcare, broadband that I know you've already been working on. But how will it be balancing that responsibility with the realities of going out and campaigning and trying to establish your name recognition statewide?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And one thing I always want to let people know is I certainly would not be the first president pro tem to be running for a statewide position from that office. And that's true for the Speaker of the House as well. There's a lot of precedent. Of course, I would be the first woman within the Senate to be doing that, but there is certainly a track record of people successfully running from that position. I'm part of a team in the Senate. I see myself really as sort of the team captain, and so much of the work happens because of the talent and the experience of the senators that I serve with. And we have a lot of experience, chairs of committees, and I know that they are going to be singularly focused on policy and also making sure that we spend that ARPA money really wisely that you talked about. And, frankly, Andrew, I was thinking this morning about how this is going to be a wild ride in so many ways, because we don't know what's going to happen with some of those other statewide offices. I certainly have heard rumors that perhaps some of the folks who are in those statewide positions right now may be stepping down, and certainly the lieutenant governor's position is now going to open up. So we are all going to have to work really, really hard together to keep focused on the policy when we're in the building and keep the campaigning outside the building. And I already met with the lieutenant governor about this exact thing. Had a conversation with her when we were up for the special session a few weeks ago. And she agreed that we cannot have the campaign interfering with this work, especially when we've got hundreds of millions of federal dollars to spend wisely. And, of course it will be a challenge, but as you said, every single session is a challenge. And I love my job. I love working on behalf of Vermonters, and I trust that my team and I are going to be able to navigate this together.
So getting back to that issue or point about political polarization,
Yeah.
What would your approach be to them who are just very dug in on, well, we don't want Build Back Better, we don't want an infrastructure bill, we don't want all the other pieces that members of your party have been advocating for?
Right. So there's a couple different levels here. So to that last point that you made, absolutely, there is certainly a strong thread right now within the Republican Party, which is about obstructionism when it comes to President Biden's agenda. So it's important for me to be clear that I want this president to be successful. I think that plan that he has is critical for Vermont families. It's critical for the infrastructure investments that we need. And so my job will be, I think, representing Vermonters' interests, making sure that the president's agenda is not derailed. And part of what I think I can do well is really unite the different aspects of the Democratic Party itself. Now, to your point about folks across the aisle, I certainly have a track record of working with people respectfully across the aisle, finding the overlap. I certainly understand that in Congress, it's a much more toxic environment right now. But I want to tell you about, if I could, I want to tell you about this project that I've been part of for the last 6 months or so. I actually have a monthly meeting with Democrats and Republicans who are not all in here in Vermont. They're national leaders, not necessarily in politics, but in various aspects of the world of business and nonprofits. And we get together every month for an hour and a half to talk about how do we change the way that we are talking with each other and our constituents. And again, to this point of being able to disagree on policy without absolutely demonizing each other, making the other person out to be a horrible enemy. And I think about this a lot in terms of our own communities and families. Certainly within my own family, my extended family, I know that there are people that do not support this president within my own family. There are people who certainly voted for Trump. And we cannot just write those people off because we have political disagreements, right? So even within our own family, you can't shut the door on them. But we also have to be focused, absolutely focused on the people that we're sent there to represent, which is our constituents. And I've seen Peter Welch and Senator Leahy in particular be very good about trying to find the overlap with their colleagues even people who are on the opposite side of the political spectrum. And I intend to lead from that place. But I'm not naive. I know it's not easy, but I do know that when you approach the work being focused on delivering for your people back home and trying to take ego out of it, you will bring more people into the conversation. I've seen it happen in my own work. I believe that to be true.
And another schism that seems to be in play is also between quote unquote progressive Democrats and mainstream Democrats, to the point where it seems like the messaging that comes forth is one of disarray and just sort of internal bickering. Would that be an area you'd also want to focus on, trying to be a bridge to unite
Absolutely.
warring factions, if that's not too strong?
Yeah. I mean, I think there is, there's a lot at stake right now, and there are sometimes disagreements over strategy, right? It's not so much, I think, not often disagreement over policy, certainly some details, but it's really about strategy. And there are different strategies to be employed, at different critical moments. And I think, as long as, I continue to want to show up for my constituents, and when I mean my constituents, I'm really talking about Vermont families and all their iterations, that when we keep that, center of the conversation, it does help bridge the different factions within the party. We always say that the Democratic Party is a really big tent, and I think that's a good thing. But I do think that our challenge will be, there's a strong possibility that we will be in the minority after the midterms, and then we are going to have to get really clear on how we pull in the same direction together. I know it won't be any surprise to you, Andrew, to know that we are in a workforce crisis of gigantic proportions right now. And some people call it the big quit or the big resignation, right? We've had thousands of Vermonters decide to rethink their jobs. This is certainly impacting employers and nonprofit organizations across Southern Vermont, and most acutely with our restaurant, hospitality industry, and our medical facilities. And so a lot of the investments that we want to make in this upcoming session are around these issues, really looking at ladders for people to move quickly into jobs that are available right now. We've got, I believe the last count, there were 10,000 positions right now in Vermont that were openly recruiting and posting on the Department of Labor's website. So we know the jobs are there. We know we need to provide families with an affordable way to get the training and the education to get into those jobs. And that's going to be a big focus of the work that we'll do.
Before I let you go, just one final question. Two issues that I think I'm sure you're concerned about, and I know you've addressed during your time in the legislature. Guns and abortion.
Yeah.
What will be your stance on those two areas going forward if elected to Congress?
So I think Vermont has been a really strong leader when it comes to reproductive liberty and really making sure that decisions about reproductive rights are made by individuals, their families, and their physicians. We really don't need to have lawmakers making decisions for individuals about what to do with their bodies. And so been a big champion of that at the state level. We'll continue to be a champion of that at the federal level. I think that in particular, the law right now in Texas that emboldens people to sort of become the reproductive Gestapo and spy on each other is completely and totally abhorrent, and it's antithetical to who we are as Americans. So I think that will definitely be something that I will continue to campaign on. And we're at another critical point, I feel like, with our conversation around firearms in this country. We continue to have these mass shootings. I think it is a fair question to ask. Is it time to look again at an assault weapons ban at the federal level. And I know for some Vermonters who are deeply concerned about their Second Amendment rights, I understand that. We are not talking about impeding someone's ability to protect themselves, their family, or to hunt. We have a very strong hunting culture there. But I do think it's time for us to really ask ourselves, is this serving us? Is this serving our children when more and more children are afraid to go to school because of what might happen in an active shooter situation? Now, these are not easy issues. These are not issues that would be passed easily within Congress. Certainly on a much more, I think, doable, manageable level, really looking to close some more of the loopholes around gun purchasing. And also something near and dear to my heart is really looking at the epidemic of gun violence when it comes to young men and older men taking their lives with firearms. Vermont is an outlier. We have a very high rate of suicide with firearms, and they're almost always men here in Vermont. And I feel like we need to be asking ourselves, what are we getting wrong that we're not supporting these people around both their mental health challenges and gun safety. So not easy topics to talk about, but I am someone who really welcomes difficult conversations with people. That's the only way forward.
Well, Senator Balint, thank you very much again for your time. I really appreciate that. And well, good luck out there on the campaign trail. And the primary is when? August 9th, I think, or something like that?
It is, yeah, I believe it is the 9th. It's definitely in August and towards the beginning. And I should have it, blazed into my head, but I don't yet. But yes, and because I think part of the reason why I don't necessarily know exactly the date, because we start voting earlier, right? A lot of people vote by mail. So the campaign season and the voting season will really start in earnest in getting people to turn out the vote in July. So thank you for your encouragement, and I know we'll talk again.
Oh, I'm sure we will.
Becca Balint, a former middle school teacher, won her first political contest in a race for the state Senate from Windham County in 2014. She went on to become the majority leader in 2017 at the start of her second term. And then, in 2021, she was elected as the Senate Pro Tem, the top position in the Senate. We're also hoping to arrange a comparable discussion with Lieutenant Governor Molly Gray, shown here when we interviewed her back in 2020 when she was running for Lieutenant Governor, and we look forward to presenting that. Meanwhile, for the GNAT-TV News Project, I'm Andrew McKeever.